very good evening, everyone, and welcome to Somerville Chapel for this memorial service. We very often gather here for moments of celebration. This evening, a moment of mourning and of remembrance, but also of celebration of a life lived. I had the pleasure of meeting Rafa on a number of occasions. I knew him slightly but not well, and it's right, therefore, that this evening the service will be led by many among this community and the various communities gathered here who did have that opportunity of getting to know him in an array of contexts. I know represented among you here are people who met Rafa through his Somervillian connections, his connections at Keble and Emmanuel College, and Hertford, where he sang, the various boat clubs and other commitments to which he contributed so fulsomely and enthusiastically. It is a sad occasion, a mournful occasion, but a celebratory occasion of these coming together of people who had that opportunity of knowing Rafa and have words and thoughts to share this evening. The service will proceed more or less as announced on the programmes you picked up when coming in, but there are a number of people who had words and contributions, thoughts they would like to have heard said this evening and for various reasons were unable to share them personally. Therefore, after each of the listed tributes, Somerville's MCR President, Kevin, will read those comments and thoughts on behalf of others. At the end of this service, there'll be a retiring collection and some details are given on the back of your programmes. And afterwards, there is dinner in the hall, but also some refreshments will be served in the MCR, and you're all very welcome to remain behind and partake of those. I'd now like to invite the Principal to come forward and formally open this evening's service.
My role as Principal of Somerville is simply to welcome you all to the college and to say how very sorry I am for the loss that so many of you and so many others have suffered of this extraordinary person, Rafa, who was so full of life and had so much to offer and gave so much to so many of his friends. Colleges, and at least 4 of the colleges that Rafa was associated with, I believe, are represented here today. Colleges are places that can offer an enormous amount where the community can really come together and help each other. We can help each other to celebrate, and we can provide solace and comfort when a friend is lost. So I am really pleased to see so many of you here today in Somerville College's chapel, and I speak for the college as a whole in sharing your sense of loss and hoping that we can be of some comfort to each other as we both, as Brian has said, both mourn and celebrate the loss and the life of a very, very gifted and vibrant individual who meant so much to so many of you.
Oh, Putting together the memories I wanted to share tonight has not been an easy task. Not because there are too few, but because there are so many. I mean, Rafa was a guy who would shave off his moustache in a silly bed with some posh London golfers for £500, which he would then donate to charity. He was a guy who would explain to you in detail why, considering the laws of aerodynamics, it is clearly preferable to fight one horse-sized duck over 100 duck-sized horses. Someone who would come into the MCR, all beaming and excited, and declare that after a wonderful lunch with a potential supervisor, he had now decided to apply for a DPhil, even though it was the last day before the deadline. Who would write his entire DPhil application literally overnight and get a place at Oxford. Rafa was an active part of 2 choirs and 1 boat club. He captained the university's prestigious second golf team and the MCR's somewhat less prestigious first croquet team, and he still managed to go to more formal dinners and black tie events than anyone else in this chapel, including the principal. He was as passionate as he was knowledgeable about an incredibly wide range of things, and he was always happy to share this knowledge and passion with anyone, be they close friends or total strangers, which of course they would never remain for long. I think when Jay Gatsby claims to be an Oxford man, Rafa is the person he has in mind. So it is no surprise that Rafa is remembered in 2 services in Oxford alone. And of course, given how much of an Oxford thing it is to have 2 services in 2 different colleges rather than 1, we all know that Rafa would have very much appreciated it. Whenever I thought about what to say at this service, I came back to one memory I have of our exchange dinner with Exeter College. I was sitting next to Rafa, and he was going on and on about how beautiful the chapel was. So after dinner, we went to take a look. And there was a piano standing around, and Rafa just sat down in front of it and played a beautiful little piece, quite similar to the one we are going to hear next. And out of nowhere, Rafa created this wonderful Oxford moment that you would expect to see in a film, but never really hope you could experience in real life. The same night, Rafa also said something to me that he would often say at formal dinners and on similar occasions involving conversation and good wine. Our lives are ridiculous, he would say. And by this, he meant ridiculously good. And I think this is what I would like to remember Rafa for. His understanding of and appreciation for every moment of his life. His humility, the generosity with which he shared his thoughts, ideas, and passions. The knowledge that Rafa was one of the very few people who had somehow managed to be exactly where he wanted to be, doing exactly what he wanted to do. And the fact that he was as grateful for it as I am for having had Rafa in my life, as a friend, if ever so shortly.
Hello everyone, I'm going to lend my voice to Tom Evans, who's unfortunately unable to attend. He did, however, he's an alum of the MCR, and he was able to attend the funeral service in Bilbao, and he wanted to share sort of his reflections on that. So, here it is. At San Vicente Church, within a beautiful square in Bilbao, on a bright evening, a vast number of people came to say goodbye to Rafa. The great spacious church was so full of many people even had to stand in the back. The fact that so many people were present was indicative of just how many lives were touched by Rafa. There were tears and pain, and yet despite the utter sadness of losing Rafa, which everyone felt, the service certainly felt like a celebration of his life. And what an amount there is to celebrate and admire about his life. Both before and after the funeral, Rafa's friends from Cambridge, Oxford, Bilbao, and elsewhere shared jokes and stories. Indeed, I wouldn't have expected there to have been so much laughter during that weekend in Bilbao, as many of his friends shared and recalled wonderful, joyful moments shared with Rafa. While offering my condolences to his parents and sister, I gave them the cards and photos that Rafa's friends from Somerville, as well as his golf team, wrote. His mother told me how important such messages would be for her and how important it was to see and meet Rafa's friends. I cannot imagine the pain and distress of Rafa's family, but I believe that letting them know just how loved and befriended Rafa was by so many would help them during this time. So, if you haven't already, I would invite you to write or get in touch with Rafa's family, since such messages would mean a great deal to them.
My memory of Rafa, and the unique person that he was, can perhaps be best summed up by our first meeting. I was 2 weeks into my first term at Oxford, and found myself splashing around uncontrollably in boats. At the time, I was somewhat hesitant about taking up rowing, as I had been assured by my tutors that this was incompatible with academic work, and my friends with a healthy social life. My reservations were soon to be proved wrong. Rafa was coxswain that morning, arrived 5 minutes late, something I would later find to be wholly predictable. Slightly hungover due to a little too much sherry after choir the night before, equipped in brogues, chinos, and a tweed jacket. Even the uninitiated like myself could tell this was far from conventional coxswain attire. Meeting this rather eccentric Spaniard, he seemed to epitomise the stereotypical Oxbridge man, raised my hopes that rowing and Oxford life were in fact compatible. This first encounter also marked the beginning of our post-outing breakfasts, which would become somewhat of a tradition. A tradition I would later regret, as I always seemed to Rafa breakfasts from this point on. At the last count, this stood at infinity breakfasts and bottled port. These breakfasts were a central part of our relationship, and despite being a postgraduate, Rafa went out of his way to engage and talk with me, and really took me under his wing. Rafa was always on hand to offer advice, counsel, encouragement, and above all, an infectious ability to make myself and others laugh, particularly when we need it. Once, when I was worrying about what I thought was a particularly dire collection, he informed me that after his first set of collections at Cambridge, he was marked as a great disappointment by his tutor. He walked out with the first, not too bad for a disappointment. It was this compassionate commitment and loyalty to others, which I'm sure we all felt, which enamoured Rafa to us all. Since coming to Oxford, Rafa became both a mentor and my closest friend. Hubert Humphrey once said, "The greatest gift in life is friendship, and I have received it. And although I will miss Rafa greatly, I shall look back with fond memories of the happy times we spent together." As well as being a central part of my own experience of Oxford, Rafa has also been a key member of the boat club over the last 2 years, choosing to row and cox with Somerville, despite transferring to Keble this year. Rafa brightened many a dark and cold 6:30 morning outing, regaling us with rowing trivia and stories. Unfortunately, most of these stories originated from the other place. Well, nobody can be perfect. A particular favourite of such stories was Rafa's introduction to the Emmanuel School of Coxing. After a particularly windy day on the River Cam, when he became well acquainted with the banks of the Cam, his boatman offered some apt advice, open quotation. Coxing relies on 3 key principles. This bank, that bank, stay between them. In all seriousness, Rafa's commitment to both the men's and women's side of the boat club has been marked and will be missed by all. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank him for his help and support over the last 2 years. As some of you may know, Emmanuel College Boat Club's motto is Fit Via V, which translates as finds a way. This perhaps summarised Rafa's approach to life, as he managed to balance a plethora of commitments with the academic, choir, and of course the boat club. Over the last few weeks, I've been thinking of the best way to remember Rafa. I think this can be best achieved by embracing this motto, by making the most of the opportunities presented to oneself in life, as you can find a way to be kind and gracious to others. We can remember Rafa through our actions, replicating the values that he placed in such high regard and embodied in so many ways. Thank you.
I'm now going to lend my voice to Gemma Seabright. As many of you did, I had the pleasure of knowing Rafa both through the MCR and the boat club where he also coxed the women. Whenever you saw him, even if it was just in passing, it brightened your day. He had the ability to make our 6:30 a.m. sessions enjoyable, not just tolerable. He saw the good in every situation. Freezing morning outings were constantly interrupted because he needed to take a picture of a particularly nice sunrise, or a particularly nice horse, or just himself. He was selfless, funny, kind, intelligent, and talented. I don't know whether Rafa would love me or hate me for using OURC's words to describe him, but I'll do it anyway. They describe S-status coxes as deemed to be a much higher standard, and Rafa was just that. A higher standard of cox. He'll go down in history for that Jesus race. A higher standard rower, musician, and Oxbridge student. But most importantly, he was a higher standard of friend. Oxford will be much less without you, Rafa.
So today, I thought I would share some facts about our friend Rafa that will help us to celebrate his memory. And first, and most importantly, he snored. I know this because when the boat club went on a training camp to Ireland last year, I thought I'd be really clever and shotgun the room in our chalet that had a double bed, so I could have it all to myself. Of course, when Rafa then arrived, it was the only other sleeping space, and as a result, we had to bunk together for a couple of nights. Now, that would have been fine, except for the fact that he stacked all his Cambridge gear next to my gear, which obviously wasn't great. And there was another particularly funny moment from that training camp, which we've heard tonight about how Rafa was the quintessential Oxbridge man. And that was typified when we took the decision to visit the campus of Trinity College, Dublin. And Rafa immediately piped up and said, yes, we must visit there because it's the sister college of Oriel. As if he's the kind of guy who walks around with that kind of knowledge in his head. It's linked to Oxbridge, therefore I like it. Classic Rafa. Now, all of you will also know that Rafa loved rowing, and I definitely know that because I sat behind him the entire year. And in fact, my one endearing memory of Rafa is the back of his head because I stared at it for an entire year. And by my count, he took part in exactly 50 bumps races, which is crazy considering the typical rower does 8 a year. But more than just being a prolific rower, he had a passion and a knowledge which was infectious and made you excited about it. But on top of that, he had a gentlemanliness and a respect. And as an example, I'll never forget when we were bumped by Keeble in Torpitz last year, which saw us drop down to a lower division, so it was a big thing. Yet the first thing he did was shout out the congratulations to them, because that was the kind of man he was. He also spoke about sports as his welfare. That was his phrase for it. And now Oxford can be a stressful place, and hopefully his legacy can serve as a reminder that we should all take care of ourselves and take care of others. And sport can be a vehicle for doing that. Second fact about Rafa, and there's a little bit of a story behind this, is that he could multitask. So last year, my parents came to visit me in Oxford, and I said, I have a friend in Hertford Choir, let's go listen to them sing in their chapel. So we went and we met up with Rafa, who chatted to my parents, and he opened the door for us so we could walk over the Bridge of Sighs, and then we listened to them sing, and then we left. So my parents interacted with Rafa for, a few minutes tops. Anyway, later that night, as we were having dinner, my mom pipes up. That Rafa chap, he's such a nice guy. He's so talented with his singing in 2 choirs and his rowing and his golf and his studying in Oxford. And it's such an amazing thing to be able to sing well. And while he was in choir today, he even found the time to wink at me. And I thought to myself, jeez, Rafa, you've only gone and made my mom fall in love with you. Could you just lay off the whole world's most desirable man thing you've got going on for just a moment? But even at our first ever boat club dinner, there was a sconce for everyone who was quote-unquote slightly in love with Rafa, and half the club stood up. And now, while that is a bit of a humorous memory, there is a message behind it, because it just goes to show that there are many talented people in the world, especially at Oxford. But the key to standing out is to use those talents to benefit other people. And that's what Rafa got right. When he sang for an audience, or coxed the crew, or coached them, or captained his golf team, he used his talents to bring up others. The third and final fact that I have about Rafa is that besides rowing, besides golf, besides croquet, his favourite sport was football. And I found this out when I asked around for anyone who wanted to join me in going to watch an Oxford United game, and he came forward. He valued the chance to watch a local team, and he liked the tradition and the meaning that football has in Britain. and the sense of community you feel when you watch a match and you sing along with the chants and all that. And chatting to him, he told me that because he came from Bilbao in Spain, his favorite team was Athletic Bilbao, which is a very good team. They'd never been out of the top Spanish division. And he was telling me about how it is a team that focuses a lot on developing local players from a young age, supporting them and keeping them in the club until they got good. And that contrasts with other football clubs in Spain and elsewhere, who will often buy most of their good players, using money to get what they want quickly instead of putting in the time and effort to invest in people over a long period of time, even when there is a chance they might not benefit you enough to make that worthwhile. And if that is not the perfect metaphor with which to describe Rafa as a person, I don't know what is. Seeing the value in other people, investing in them, and who knows, they might just surprise you. That's something that I, certainly, have taken away from his life. Now that I've finished my 3 facts, the last thing I would like to say is thank you. Everyone here, and more broadly in Rafa's life, thank you. Because we've heard today about how Rafa was very special to a lot of people. And the other side of that is that Rafa's friends were very special to him. And knowing that so many people willing to give up their time to celebrate him would have been very special to him. And in my eyes, that is the message of the memory of Rafa. The message we can take away is that always treat every person around you as special and try to put a smile on their face. Do this because it's a nice thing to do, but also because one day you might wake up and they're not there anymore. Goodbye, Rafa, and row well.
The last message I'm going to share here is from Anusha and Arundam, 2 alumni from last year who lived in Wolston with Rafa for their years in Somerville as well. What makes 2 people cross paths in this world? Some call it destiny, some call it karma, some say it's just sheer luck. So to be honest, I'm not sure if it was destiny, good karma, or my luck to have the fortunate experience living across from Rafa Baptista during my year at Oxford. From our very first meeting, his affable nature, sense of humor, and charismatic personality drew us together as friends, despite the cultural and academic differences we had. And when I say academic differences, let me take the time to clarify that I definitely felt out of my league when I learned about all of his astounding academic accomplishments as a true Oxbridge student. However, Rafa's kind-hearted and free-spirited nature never made me feel insecure, but rather gave me the confidence that I found a guide and a friend to whom I can turn to during my time at Oxford. Running into him in the hallway while doing our laundry, cooking, or coming back from class always turned into a long, entertaining conversation during which we would fill each other with our daily endeavors and vent about the basic struggles of student life. Anytime I opened the door to my room in Wolston, if Rafa happened to be in the doorway, he would peer inside and exclaim, "Ah, I'm so jealous of your room. You have the penthouse suite of Somerville." His voice still echoes in my ears as if it was just yesterday that we ran into each other. On my very last night at Oxford, Rafa and I sat down over a few bottles of wine in my room, overlooking the Somerville courtyard, and talked for over 5 hours about every topic under the sun, ending the night with a pact that we would visit each other in due time, in Madrid and San Francisco, respectively. So it saddens me deeply to know that my time with such an amazing person has come to an abrupt end. But I just pray that his soul finds peace and comfort. And now we have a lovely little video that Rafa recorded actually himself that illustrates his first term here in Oxford. Each day is represented by a second of the video. And I'm sure many of you will either recognize yourselves or the various places in Oxford. And it's just very indicative of how broad his impact was on this university and its people. So, yeah. And I guess at this point, I'd like to say a few words on behalf of myself in closing. But let me begin first, as Rowan said, for thanking you all for coming and coming together to remember Rafa's life and how he connected us all. I've been both thoroughly impressed and completely unsurprised by how many people have come together to celebrate Rafa in the face of this tragedy. Rafa always seemed uniquely gifted in his ability to connect with others, and it's become increasingly evident just how many lives were touched by his own. Everyone who knew him seems to have some personal story or joke they shared with him. The first time I met Rafa, the memory's ingrained in my head, likely because the exchange mostly involved him repeating the words "Chicky Nando's" over and over, much to my confusion. He then went on to tell me a load of trivia about Oxford and Cambridge and the various colleges of each and the traditions. And to be quite honest, on paper, it should have been a relatively boring conversation, but it wasn't. He never just did or said, he shared. He shared his excitement for rowing, for singing, for traditions, as well, of course, for nice port and sherry. He shared his commitment and his drive. And he was, of course, never short of a sassy comment to share, either. He was always making fun and attempting to mimic my American accent, and he never failed to greet me with a jovial and very over-exaggerated, "My man." And my memories of him, as I'm sure all of yours are, filled with illustrations of his spirit. Whether he was yelling at us from the coxswain position or stopping us to take a scenic picture of the river, inviting us to experience his involvement in the various choirs for evensongs, or bustling in an hour late after singing at Hartford to reveal the MCR election results. Plus, I'm sure many of us remember the candle wax in the sherry incident. As people have said, he's one of the most Oxbridge people I've ever known, and he made me excited to be here, and I liked being a part of his life as much as I enjoyed him in mine. He was my colleague, my cox, and my friend, and he will be missed. But he will not be forgotten. And in his spirit, I would like to invite all of you to come join us at the Somerville MCR after the ceremony for a small toast of sherry in his honor. And of course, also to the Somerville Hall for Sunday roast. You can try one of the many desserts that Rafa was so fond of sampling. Thank you.